Hey guys, there's good witches and there's bad witches.
While most of us use our cauldrons to whip up a nice patch of iced coffee or as a decorative plant hanger, witchery has long since been revered in the world of show business. In fact, some of the most interesting characters in TV shows have more magic in their pinkies than we have in our whole bodies. Some of them are outright evil, while some are teetering on the edge, a cat's whisker away from complete destruction.
I'm saying that witches are real, Harvey.
You know that we can't talk about this subject without including the prima ballerina of TV witches, right? Although there's a lot to be said for Melissa Joan Hart's version of the Archie character, we're not here to talk about that 90s nostalgia. Instead, let's focus on Kiernan Shipka's revival series, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. To say that this show takes a look at the dark side of the character would be an understatement. That's what makes it so brilliant. Gone is the talking cat, and instead there's plenty of to and froing between the path of night and the path of light. Sabrina is fiercely protective of both her witchy friends and her high school buddies. We get to see a different element of Sabrina's personality in this show as she throws down the gauntlet.
I can't do this.
You must.
Taking on Satan himself. What could be better than that, right? When it comes to battling it out in the name of love, lust, or just for fun, there's really no one better than Sabrina. Don't let the blonde bob fool you. She's as dark as they come. Buffy the Vampire Slayer brought the 90s and 2000s to their knees with vampires, witches, demons, and all the other forces of darkness. Buffy might have been the main chick keeping creatures of the night in line, but she wouldn't have gone far without her BFF and resident witch, Willow. Willow's story arc is one of the most interesting elements on the show. When we first meet her, she's meek and mild as an unpopular nerd that struggles to stand up for herself. However, when she meets Buffy, she slowly begins to take an interest in the dark arts and finds out that she's got a knack for it. Over the course of the show's 7 seasons, Willow undergoes some major transformations, including becoming addicted to magic. While she is a good witch at heart, she goes off the deep end when she seeks revenge for the passing of her girlfriend. We've seen Willow at her very best battling the seedy underbelly of the Hellmouth, and at her ultimate worst when she's trying to destroy the world. What more do you want from your friendly neighborhood Wiccan? When rumors first started swirling of an adaptation of The Witcher, fans were excited but rightly skeptical. After all, when you've got a book series that's been turned into a much-loved gaming franchise, there's a lot at stake. If it went wrong, it would cheapen everything else and end up costing a lot of money. Thankfully, producers landed on their feet when they cast Henry Cavill as our main man Geralt and Anya Chalotra as his paramour Yennefer. As a character, Yennefer is unique and complex. The witch stereotype almost completely goes out the window. Her whole young life she felt as though she had something to prove, even though she was abused and treated like a literal pig. She was always the underdog, which is what makes her so likable. What's more, Yennefer knows that the sacrifices she made to become a sorceress were too much. While her magic is impressive and her powers certainly knock Geralt off his feet, Yennefer's true witchery lies in who she is as a person. That's not to say that we don't completely dig it every time she busts out a spell, though. Game of Thrones certainly had it all, didn't it? From dragons to forbidden love to wild, murderous women and soft, genteel, reluctant kings in the north. It was heartbreaking, not least because of the way it ended, which annoyed fans to no end. If we had one itty-bitty complaint, we would have liked to have seen a bit more of our main witchy woman, Melisandre. She was such an interesting character that at first was completely wicked and repulsive. We'll never forget what she did to the poor innocent child, and yet we can't help but like her toward the end of the series. She tries to seek redemption for the things that she did wrong, and we love that in a witch. Melisandre's ability to portray herself as a beautiful woman when she was really an aging hag also scored some bonus points with us. She might have been a deplorable witch most times, but when she was good, she was kind of endearing, wasn't she? Don't judge us, we can't help it. Don't act like you don't love her in the end too. She deserves that much. When we first meet Saruman in Lord of the Rings, we think it's nice that Gandalf has a buddy. After all, isn't that what we all want when we get to that age?
My old friend, Saruman.
It would be nice to be able to drop by and visit an old pal, sip some wine, figure out how to save the world, that kind of thing. However, it soon becomes clear that Saruman has been turned by that pesky Sauron. Maybe if Saruman didn't get too big for his boots, then he and Gandalf could have kicked back, played some chess, and smoked some hobbit pipeweed. Anyway, it's clear that by that battle between the two old foes in the first movie that Saruman has some really wicked powers. He literally wipes the floor with Gandalf like he's a paper towel before imprisoning him. Considering how epically impressive Gandalf's powers are usually, Saruman is clearly packing a punch. No one can mess with him.
He's back! He's back!
Did you really think we'd talk about something like this and not include He Who Shall Not Be Named? Well, surely we're past that point of not actually saying his name now, so let's do it all together. 1, 2, 3, Voldemort. There, that wasn't so bad, was it? If you grew up watching Harry and his pals battle against Tom Riddle, then he probably terrified you. Don't worry, you weren't alone. Ralph Fiennes in that snake makeup is something that kids were never meant to see. Perhaps Voldemort's most compelling quality is that he was once a mere Hogwarts student like the rest of them. The dangerous path that he took had disastrous consequences for everyone in the wizarding world. But that's what makes him so great. Harry had talent and went one way, but could have easily ended up like Tom if the tables had been turned. Did we spend our adolescent years wanting him to perish? Yes, definitely, but there is an element of humanity there, just like in every evil wizard and witch. It's just that echo of what they once were that makes them so thrilling to watch. The Craft just doesn't get enough recognition in our humble opinion. It's a firecracker of a movie that should be right up there with the best fantasy movies of all time. Move over Lord of the Rings, you can't hold the top spot forever. In fact, The Craft was released in 1996, way before movies of this kind were really fashionable. Although some might argue that the baddest witch in the movie was Sarah, they're wrong. Yes, Sarah ultimately triumphed over her friends turned foes, but Nancy was the one with the real power. Sarah was always bound by what she thought was right, which limited her. On the other hand, Nancy was as crazy as a box of frogs and had literally nothing to lose. Every move she made could have destroyed her, and she knew it. But she didn't really care. In the end, she ultimately went crazy. But you have to give this girl credit. She brought gothic chic to a new level and owned what she was, warts and all. We can get down with a witch like that. Invite her to the party. Just keep her away from any balconies. Ah, gentle Bonnie, there never was a witch more deserving of a magical Oscar. Over the course of the Vampire Diaries, Bonnie put up with a lot of nonsense from Elena and the rest of her friends. Whenever they got into a pinch, they relied on her to get them out of it. For the most part, Bonnie obliged because she loved her friends and wanted to protect them. She even managed to get out of a prison world, and that takes a lot of guts. Although she started out as a novice witch, Bonnie steadily rose up through the ranks to become one of the most powerful witches of all time. Not only did she do all that, she did it while navigating the type of relationship drama that only a show like The Vampire Diaries can bring. Most of us can't do the grocery shopping while trying to get over an ex, so kudos to you, Bonnie, showing us that we all need to grow a pair. Hats off to the last surviving Bennett witch. We salute you, mighty one. Has there ever been a trio more wonderfully charming than the Halliwell sisters? They never signed up for the gig, but when they finally stopped fighting fate and embraced their powers, they kicked butt. Sure, Prue, Piper, Phoebe, and Paige wanted a normal life, but they didn't get it. They really went through the ringer because of their abilities too. With dating demons, losing Prue, and marrying white lighters. We wouldn't have it any other way. While they're all forces to be reckoned with individually, who they are as a group is really something else. Each one of them could do something that the other sisters couldn't.
What are you doing? I can't do this. This can't be happening.
From telekinesis to premonition. When they got together, they could kick some serious demon butt to save the day, making for some truly epic television. When the show ended in 2006, it was a sad day for fantasy fans, but the legacy of the Halliwell sisters lives on in our hearts and in our minds forever. If that sounds a little sad, that's because it is. It took us forever to find a show that we loved as much as this. We can't mention Saruman without giving Gandalf the nod he deserves. From the very beginning of the movies, it's clear that Sir Ian McKellen's character isn't there to mess around. Okay, he's got some fireworks that he likes to pop off to impress the kids, but Gandalf is no birthday party magician. He's got some serious power to him, especially when he comes back as Gandalf the White. Although his powers aren't fully explored in Peter Jackson's film series, Gandalf as a character can't be underestimated. He's able to heavily influence people, impart some sage wisdom, and is key in the battle against Sauron. Without him and his staff, Frodo and the rest of the hobbits would never have saved the day. There's a reason why everyone loves the G-Man so much. Not only is he powerful beyond belief, but he's not afraid to put his foot down and assert his authority. Not to mention he's wise beyond our wildest dreams. Imagine having him as a grandpa. Wouldn't that be awesome? Okay, so the jury is out on whether Vanessa Ives is a straight-up witch or not, but she does have some otherworldly powers. Not only is Eva Green's character beautiful and mysterious, but she's a medium that the forces of darkness want to dub the Mother of Evil. Vanessa is the main character in Penny Dreadful, driving forward the story as she tries desperately to come to terms with her own destiny. All Vanessa wants to do is find peace in her own religious beliefs, but her powers have her in constant turmoil. Dracula himself wants to whisk her away to be his unholy wife, which doesn't exactly make for a nice Sunday afternoon church service. Sadly, Vanessa only finds solace when the series ends and the man she loves shoots her to stop her suffering. The role was so iconic that Eva Green was nominated for a Golden Globe for her work on the series. That hardly ever happens for actors in a fantasy show, so bravo to Green for turning in one heck of a performance. Fans of L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz series might be wondering why we haven't included the Wicked Witch of the West in our lineup. While she is a wonderful witch indeed, there's someone else from the Ozverse that tickles our fancies slightly more in terms of sheer evilness. The Return to Oz was a departure from the first movie and decidedly darker. Some fans liked it, some fans hated it, but they were united on one thing. Princess Mombi was the worst. Not only did she swap heads whenever she felt like putting on a new face, but she was in charge of the Wheelers. Yeah, those weird punk-looking dudes with the crazy hair and ridiculously long limbs that gave you nightmares for weeks. Anybody that has those guys quaking in their boots, or should we say wheels, is not to be messed with. Mombi is rendered powerless in the end of the movie, but we like to think that she's still out there somewhere causing trouble like the little scamp she is. We can just picture her causing mischief even when she's gray and old.
Who are you?
Jonathan Morgenstern.
When Shadowhunters was cancelled suddenly after just a handful of seasons, fans of the show were distraught. It was amazing to see Clary battling against demons and accepting her true lineage, but there was one family member that she really wanted to be rid of. Her brother Jonathan may not have been a wizard as much, but he was still a magical being for all intents and purposes. He was also as evil as they come, and a massive pain in the butt. He did his best to keep Clary to himself and convince the rest of the world she had passed away. So there's that for a start. Jonathan's obsession with his sister and desperation to be with her was something Game of Thrones fans might recognize. Out of all the deplorable things that he did, and there were many, Jonathan seemed convinced that he was doing the right thing. That's when you know you've got an insane magical maniac on your hands. In fairness to Jonathan, though, he did have a pretty terrible upbringing, so it's hardly surprising that he was as nuts as they come. There just wouldn't have been a better actor to play Mr. Gold than Robert Carlyle. The Scottish star brings the deplorable Rumpelstiltskin to life in a way that no others could. At the beginning of the show, his supreme power is only hinted at, as it's clear he remembers the events that went down prior to the curse being placed. The power that he holds over the evil Queen Regina is palpable, as all he has to do to get her to bend to his will is say please. Mr. Gold is interesting on a number of levels, both in the present Storybrooke and the land prior. Gold doesn't just stick to one type of magic either. He's a dab hand at fairy magic, potion craft, and witchcraft, making him a triple threat. Some fans believe that this calculating menace is bad through and through, but others think it's not as black and white. Like many other characters in Once Upon a Time, Mr. Gold is a complex fellow that often flits between good and evil, much to the confusion of the inhabitants of Storybrooke.
Because, you great buffoon, we want to live forever, not just until tomorrow.
She put a spell on you, and now you're hers. It's the wonderful, incomparable Winifred Sanderson. While the trio of Sanderson sisters are a true testament to wickedness, Winnie is head and shoulders above the rest when it comes to being bad. Sarah Sanderson is almost too ditzy and boy crazy to be any real threat, while Mary is just obsessed with eating. Winnie, on the other hand, possesses powers that are much more threatening than either of her sisters. Yeah, she's supposed to be funny, but she's also rotten to the core. She doesn't think twice when she turns Thackeray Binks into a cat and is all set to gobble up the children in Salem. Why? Because she wants to look younger. Lest we forget what she did to her ex-boyfriend Billy, the poor lovable maggot farm. Winnie got her comeuppance in the end, but we've all been begging to see her back on our screens ever since. The movie was released in 1993, so it's interesting that Winnie still has that hold on us nearly 30 years later. There you have it. What do you think? Who would charm you into oblivion? Let us know in the comments section down below. And before you go, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing from us here at The Binger. Until next time, thanks for watching. And stay safe out there. You don't know what mischievous mage is lurking around the corner.